I've been asked to speak in my role as president of the Federation, but I'm actually also drawing very heavily on my experience at my own organisation, the Museum of Cardiff, or the Cardiff Story Museum as we used to be known. For those of you who know us, you'll know that the Museum of Cardiff has faced a series of significant challenges over the last 5 years or so, including quite major reductions in budget and space. So what I've got to say on behalf of the Fed and using my experience at the Museum of Cardiff, I think, is, you know, how we can make our heritage organisations, and obviously my particular experiences in museums, but how we make our organisations more resilient. I've put sporting in brackets there, not because I'm particularly making a point. All I'm saying is that what I'm saying today isn't just related to sporting heritage, it's related to heritage organisations generally, so please don't be expecting any kind of sport-specific information as such. So, yes, brilliant. So the first network I'm going to be talking about is an organisation called the Association of Independent Museums, or AIM. And for any organisation, and particularly heritage organisation, I think they're a really crucial network to know of and be involved with. Their email, their website address is down there in the corner. Over the past few years, they've distilled what a prospering museum, in their case, needs: 8 areas in their hallmark scheme. So from their point of view, and I think this is true of any organisation, to be resilient, to be prospering, you need to have a clarity of purpose, obviously your finances, be resilient and well managed. Your collections are made accessible, that you're collecting and guarding them, but you're making them accessible, that you have a true visitor focus, that you understand your visitors and supporters, and invest in its improvement of the visitor experience, that you concentrate on awareness and networks, that you're innovative, that your governance practice is good and obviously follows charity commission guidelines, and that you have a leadership and a culture in your organisation that can readily adapt and respond. So when I've actually been framing this talk, this presentation, and responding to the brief that I've had in terms of, you know, using your local networks, I've realised I'm effectively focusing on 3 particularly of these 3 key areas. So that's purpose, visitor focus, or as I will interpret it, community focus, and awareness and networks. So the first thing I'd argue any resilient organisation needs is a clear purpose. It gives a focus, and everybody involved understands the purpose of the organisation, what to concentrate effort and resources on. And because I always like to get a Jimi Hendrix quote in order to do that clarity of purpose, in order to create that, you need to get your head together first. So a clear purpose needs a clear clarity of thought. So you need to know yourself, you need to know your strengths and weaknesses, what you do well, what you don't do well, your USPs in terms of your collection, your offer, your team, their skills and experience, the background and interests that they have. Crucially, you need to know your challenges and how they impact on how you can work and what you can do. But you need to create a compelling vision for your organisation and be serious about it. The vision of the organisation needs to be owned by everybody. That's top down, inside out, those that work for the organisation, those who use the organisation. It needs to be owned by those who work with you, your staff, your volunteers, your participants, your visitors, the freelancers that you commission, your partners that you work with. And it's actually sometimes surprising that everybody isn't entirely on the same page when you go through this process. But you can only really create that if you know what your community of users and your potential community of users, the stakeholders that you're serving, you know, what they want from you. And that is the thing that will give you real focus. So I'm obviously a museum professional. I love collections. Don't get me wrong, it's the reason I went into what I do for a living. But collections won't be resilient unless they're relevant. And they're not going to be relevant unless they're used, and used by a variety of people. So you need a community, or as AIM uses, a visitor focus. You need to understand your existing audiences, who's visiting or involved, why they're attracted, what they like and what they'd like more or less of. And you need to evaluate what you're doing. You need to understand the demographics of who you're already working with, so that then you can actually see who you're not working with, who's missing. And then you need to decide on who you're going to concentrate on working with. This is an image of our monthly Dinky Dragons event at the Museum of Cardiff. It's an event for babies, toddlers and their grown-ups. Dinky Dragons is a good example of us using networks to create a programme to answer need. So we were very clearly getting the feedback from our visitors that the galleries were brilliant for families, but the one thing that was missing was something for the very littlest in the family. We had lots of activities from, say, 4 upwards, but nothing for the smallest, like I say, of the family. So our visitors cited the need. We then consulted and got playgroups, the council's family services, National Childbirth Trust groups, Flying Start, which is Wales's version of Sure Start, I think, but in Wales it's continued. So we involved a lot of people. You know, Google is your friend in these circumstances. You put in what you want, and then it churns out, you know, possible contacts that you can then go out and meet. And they helped us frame up what Dinky Dragons became. They told us the equipment and the toys that we needed to buy. We went and got a small grant, only 2.5k from the Federation of Welsh Museums, before I was president, I hasten to add. And we enabled it to start, and it's been one of the most successful things that we've done on site. If our offers are not interesting or relevant, or we're not marketing them in the right way, that's on us. And I think that's something that we have to be very brave to recognise, no matter what type of organisation and heritage organisation you're working with. To tease that out, you need those communities to help you understand it. So you need to go out and proactively ask for advice, for input and ideas, but meaningfully consult. Be prepared to be challenged, and be prepared for what you think is the best idea ever to be totally pulled apart. The other thing that you've got to do is act and deliver on what comes out of those discussions. So make sure that you're giving back and you're not just taking. Relationships and building networks with your communities must be two-way. And when I talk about communities, I'm meaning any group of people who share something. So it's about the 7 strands of diversity, it's about geographical groups, it's about socioeconomic groups, it's about interest groups. There's a real vibrancy in our galleries, I think, because we've created from the outside in or the bottom up. We practice what we preach. The ethos of involving communities in a real, tangible, non-lip service way is absolutely crucial to our organisation. Our communities made decisions about what they wanted their museum to be. They weren't rubber stamping decisions that, you know, I'd made or the project team had made. So the colours in our logo, the font sizes that we use on the panels, they were all decided by the community. It was kind of co-creation before co-creation was a word. And we value their input, and demonstrably so. So this is an example, a photograph from our opening, and you know, we invited as few councillors as we possibly could get away with. Please don't tweet that, actually. And it was the community, members of the communities who'd helped us create the museum that got their 5 minutes with Camilla. And over coffee, do sidle up to me. I've got some real comedy stories about that day and what some people said to the Duchess of Cornwall. But it was important for us to show how much we valued their input. So in terms of collecting, this is, you know, briefly what we do in our organisation and how it's actually built on networks and partnerships. So that's how we make the work that we do sustainable, vibrant. It builds our capacity and our resilience. And I'm taking our work with refugees and asylum seekers in Cardiff as an example. So in our collecting, we identify the community and identify their networks. And then we work with them to understand what they feel would represent their story in the museum. So they are the specialists. They are going to know better than you. And I think that is something that some heritage organisations really find difficult to admit. But I think, you know, if you're going to have a resilient, a sustainable organisation, that is the first thing that you need to recognise, that actually you're not the specialist. I can see some real big nods of the head. Yeah, amen, sister. Okay, good. It's true about our historic collecting, but it's also true about our contemporary collecting. So again, we forge links with community groups, a big network of community groups. We work with over 150 different community groups or organisations every year. So we've got a big network of partners, if you like, and we'll be out and about with them collecting sort of contemporary items as well as historic. Then that all feeds into our displays, both permanent exhibitions and temporary exhibitions. But it also feeds into our programming. And again, this is where we are able to provide a vibrant programme for our visitors when we don't necessarily have the funding underneath it. So we work very much in partnership with, again, a whole range of networks and partners to provide a vibrant exhibitions programme. So the example in the on the right-hand side is from a great get-together event that we run every year. It's a big family fun day in the garden next door. So we have the usual activities, the usual museum-y activities, you know, dressing up, crafts, music. But we also have this activity which is led by that network of community members. So it's as a direct response to growing instances of hate crime in the city. And it's an activity that we call 5 words of welcome or 5 phrases of welcome. So it's individuals from those communities teaching visitors 5 words of welcome in their languages. Now that came from different community groups that we have relationships with, but it also came, the leaders of that activity also came from another network that we have, which is via the universities in the city. So there's several universities in Cardiff. We're well provided for with universities. But I think this gives an example of how, if you think tangentially about what you need, you can often find somebody to help you do that. So we work with one of the universities who have a translation course. And what they do is every year they come and, as part of their placement, translate our gallery text for us. So we've now got our gallery text in 13 different languages. We get something out of it, but they get something out of it because we're there commissioning, you know, and they're treating us as their client. So it's a two-way thing. We also work very closely with partners on projects and specific activities. So we work with third sector organisations. We're not community workers, we're not youth workers, but we work with those organisations that are. So we work with refugee support organisations, the Welsh Refugee Council, housing associations, the council, to ensure that we have access to the expertise, that we know what we're offering is needed and wanted, And then we work hard to make sure that those relationships are embedded, that they last longer than the one event or the one project. So we return and work with those organisations time and time again. And I think crucially, it's also about making sure that everybody in your organisation has that remit to do that. It's not our learning and outreach officers' job to do that. It's everybody's job in our organisation to make those relationships happen. We also make sure that we're of use to them, so we're responsive to their needs. So relationships are by no means on our terms, or just on our terms. So for example, we've helped those 150 organisations that I've talked about. We've helped them lever in well over £1 million worth of their own funding now by being named partners, in some cases helping them to put funding applications together, or helping them to deliver the activity that they're looking at. So that's a sort of local community networking, I suppose, and there's obviously a whole another type of networking that builds resilience, and that's sort of professional networking. So obviously you're aware of at least one professional network by literally being here. The organisation, obviously, Sporting Heritage, running this is part of the SSN, Subject Specialist Network, and there are a whole range of them. I'm really pleased to see that the SSN consortium has got a table around the corner. If you go on their website, there's a whole range of SSNs who are real sources of help, training, support, advice, whether that's in person or via toolkits and guidance. AIM I've already talked about, obviously. They've got a series of, not only the Hallmark scheme booklets and advice, but they've got a series of freely downloadable guidance resources on a whole range of topics. GEM, again, if you're looking at how to do anything that's sort of more learning based, they're a great example of a membership organisation. And obviously, you know, I'd be failing in my mission if I didn't mention your network of federations of museums across the country. So nationally in Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and regionally in England. Again, they're a good source of funding themselves. Our Fed we run a grants programme. We run training, which is obviously good in itself for skills building, but it's also really useful to meet people who are going to be useful to you in the future over a coffee. But they're also a really great source of partners, whether that's for projects, for advice, support, or funding bids. Our federation, we run a JISC mail, which anybody can sign up to, and it's one of those things that you can just post a question that you're grappling with, and you get, you know, a whole body of people kind of responding to you, and A, making you feel like you're not alone, but B, also sort of giving you advice and support and the benefit of their knowledge. And the last thing I'm going to say is the importance of being part of networks and of using networks is all about awareness raising. And this is key to resilience building. But it's often overlooked because we're so busy doing the thing. We don't shout about the thing that we're doing. And I'll end with this slide, which is something that I learned as part of the Museums Association Transformers programme a number of years ago now, but it's one of the key things that I keep returning to. And this is true in terms of if you're advocating in terms of fighting for your organisation or service, or simply advocating to a group of people who you want to work with, and you want to convince them that what you're doing is a good idea to be involved with. So the power and influence that you have in any situation is not at all based on how good you are at your job, how good your organisation is, or how people perceive you. It's literally about how visible you are. So hands up if you're a little bit gutted by that breaking news. It's literally about how visible you are and whether people know about you. So it's really, really important for that other people, be that the public, funders, decision makers, community groups, know about you and the work that you do. So to be resilient, you definitely need to be visible. I'm not able to stay this afternoon, unfortunately, but I'm always up for ponders over email. So that's my email address if any on my multiple Twitter handles, if anybody would like to get in touch. Thank you.